Okay, everybody, sorry for the delay. Thank you for joining the Heretic Clerics. Tonight we are going to be talking about secular social media. I am going to be the host tonight, and we have a guest on our show as well. It's our inaugural guest. I would like to invite everybody to stick around to the end of the show for our Atheist Spotlight. And the guest that we have tonight is Chad Paquette. He is the creator and head admin of the Rational Thinkers Facebook group. On the Rational Thinkers Facebook page, it says it was created to provide a community of support for those recovering from religious indoctrination, those exploring their beliefs or lack thereof, and as a means to share meaningful conversations amongst like-minded individuals who employ critical thinking skills and common sense to addressing the tough questions in life. So first off, I'd like to say thank you for joining us tonight, Chad. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
All right, so real quick, before we get too far into it and I start grilling Chad, I am going to share this, the article that I have. It's from Patheos. It's from the Atheist Channel side of Patheos. Yes, there is one, if you didn't know. It's just talking about building an atheist community means caring about each other, not just holding a lack of belief in our hearts. I'm going to scroll real quick. If you'd like to read the article before you go any further in the video, please just pause it and then move forward a little bit so you can read it. This article is just covering a wide range of issues that this individual has in general. All right, so Chad, what inspired you to create the Rational Thinkers Facebook group?
That is a great part. That's a great question. Ultimately, I think, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you all right.
Okay. Great question. There's a multitude of facets to that, to answer that properly. I would say initially just having a sense of community, because I think a lot of common threads amongst the people who've left religion is they really ultimately long for a sense of community and kind of knowing that number one, you're not alone, and number two, you're not crazy. Kind of leaving the religion and kind of coming to the voice of reason. And it's been kind of pounding in the back of your head for the longest time. You have to know that you're amongst people who may, be ultimately just discernibly different than you, but basically share a lot of the common rational beliefs in science and just how the world was formed, etc. So just ultimately the short answer to that would be a sense of community. So.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much. And if I might, this is kind of a twofer here. There have been religious people in the group for one reason or another. Was this incorporation for any one reason, and have you found yourself moderating those conversations for appropriateness?
Ultimately, we've tried to, instill kind of just some ground rules and basically try to operate from a place of respect, because the majority of the people that are in this group have left religion themselves, so they kind of have been at that place of inquiry or sitting on the fence, so to speak. And I think we've all been there, so I think the empathy amongst the people who are per se atheists and or agnostic in the group tend to empathize a little bit better with those that are still kind of claiming to be religious or adhere to a particular religion. So to answer your question, there are religious people in the group, and I basically have encouraged them to ask away, ask the questions that a lot of us have heard a million times before, but just they might get it in a different way from somebody, because it's not a one-size-fits-all mentality, and I think everybody in the group would agree that atheism is not just a conclusion, it's a way of life, a way of living. And does that help answer the question?
Yeah, I think it did. It seems like everyone just seems to know that there are boundaries back and forth, and just there's a kind of a mutual respect amongst not just two, but all parties involved. So it seems like it's a pretty good group of individuals there.
I have a question. So in the description it says the group is for people recovering from religious indoctrination. What draws religious people to the group? I mean, the name is pretty ambiguous, Rational Thinkers, but when you read the description, it's pretty clear that it's, I don't know. Do they feel that they're helping in the recovery, or are they here to just troll, or what do you think's going on with that?
Well, that's a great question. The people that are there from the religious perspective typically have genuine questions they're looking to have answered. They wouldn't have joined the group. We, to a roundabout way, we don't get a lot of people who troll the group. It just hasn't been that way. We've, you know, rid ourselves quickly of the one or two people who have joined in the past couple of years of that. But to touch on something, I don't think necessarily the group is that ambiguous as far as the group name goes. I think it actually speaks as to, instead of the word atheist, which describes what we are not or what we don't believe in. I think rational thinking people can be people who are, for the most part, still may hold some religious beliefs, or maybe agnostic, or it's not basically uh, exclusive to just the atheist community. So,
Well, that's what I meant by ambiguous. I mean, rational thinkers could be people from any walk of, or any religion or anything. You could still be a rational thinker, but
for the
the
most part, yes.
yeah. Well, yeah, some would argue that okay. Anyways, yeah.
No, I think both of you have a point, and I see your question because there are a lot of individuals that lean one way or another, but I have to agree, being in Rational Thinkers for some time, that it seems to be that there are thoughtful questions asked and thoughtful comments back and forth, and I've seen some of the conversations with people that are still religious, but they're more moderate. They don't hold the steadfast fundamentals. And I think that's what Chad's talking about, is there aren't necessarily that many fundies, that are in the group as it sits, that kind of thing. So to get back to the code of conduct, I'm kind of curious. We know the mission statement of the group. Have you ever had to ban anyone for violating the simple rules, I guess, of common decency?
Just one person to date that I'm aware of. It was basically somebody who in Africa, where I'm sure many of you that are part of this group, and Ellen, you've been a part of this group now for quite some time, realize that we did kind of like a home for the holidays, kind of a fundraising for a particular individual who just so happened to be Christian last year, and we came up with, my records indicate, almost $1,000 to help this person stay in his home, as he was about to be thrown out. Lack of funds to pay rent. Some medical emergencies came up for his family. Long story short, the person that we had to block also was trying to basically hit people up and just kind of leverage everybody for money, just kind of a ploy, kind of almost like the Nigerian bank scheme that we've all become privy to over the years. So outside of that, I mean, the group is basically self-regulated, and I just nice comment there, Belligerent. I appreciate it. Yeah, the group is self-regulated. It's kind of a pleasant surprise in that this group has more or less just been a means to have an outlet, just to kind of know that you're able to bounce ideas off of people who may not think identically to you, but at least they make you feel like you are not alone and you're not crazy. So
Yeah, and that individual was a very religious person, but it was kind of interesting, the entire community pitched in to pay for this person's rent, just showing that, goodness and kindness are not, religious values, that they are secular values that span across the entirety of humanity, that empathy really transcends any personal beliefs. Um, in the article that I showed you, there was a quote that sticks out to me. There are atheists of many different backgrounds who struggle a lot with their atheism, and it's not because they secretly think God exists. It's because there are circumstances beyond that mere lack of belief that make that lack of belief really hard. Have you seen that, and do you think that Rational Thinkers has been instrumental in easing some of those personal tensions and that transition?
unequivocally, yes. I think that is the biggest thing that most people fear, is that because basically you're turning your back on everything that you've ever known. And I know that you and other people that are part of this group can definitely speak to the fact that it's not just a group of strangers. It's not some just random conglomerate of atheists. It's actually a family. There's people who I've communicated with and can vouch for the fact that I've reached out on a personal level. If I know that they've had something going on in their life, i.e., going through a separation, divorce, or something like that, just to try to be a genuine friend. And I've had a multitude of people in this group reach out to me on a personal level and give me thanks for starting this. And I honestly cannot take any credit for this. I'm just a base. I'm just a guy, who wanted to have a sense of community, and this is, like I said, transformed into something I had no idea it would become. So I'm thankful.
Well, that's awesome. It sounds like a really great situation. Matt, did you have any questions?
Not really. I mean, I could bring up how the group I started and how it contrasts. I mean,
Well, that's the next point that I was going to go. If you didn't have any more questions for Chad, I was going to ask you about the group that you started in the Cape Cod area, because you also started a local atheist group, and I was wondering if you had any types of events, or how was the herding of the cats, so to speak.
yeah, I mean, I found it was pretty much a complete opposite of what Chad said. It was, I think when you're trying to get people to meet in person, it's a whole different story. Like, well, from my experience, like, that's why I think maybe his situation might be a little bit better, because when it's an online presence, there isn't much of a commitment to, I don't know, like, you don't have to get people together. You don't have to align schedules and make sure personalities mesh and all this stuff. It's more of like a laid back kind of thing. People could pop in whenever they want, So I found I've had a really hard time getting people to be able to meet up face to face. And our group on Facebook obviously is local. It's only got maybe 40 members, and like almost no one talks on there. I always try to spark communication. It's just been really hard for me. So, but I don't know. I guess I would ask if Chad had any pointers, but he kind of sounded like that. It just kind of took off on its own. But if I'm wrong, set me straight. But if you have anything, just let me know.
One of the things I would say that I actually have done to kind of just alter the fact of just having an online presence and kind of a quote-unquote superficial relationship with people, so to speak, is there are genuine ties and connections I've made with people who actually live out here in the Denver area, and or people who have traveled into the area. I've made it a point to personally get to know a lot of these people. I've gone to church with, a couple of the members of the Rational Thinkers. I've gotten together for coffee, lunch, people that drive through the airport. I just missed Rebecca, Allen's wife, when she was out here in Denver not too long ago. But there's other people who I've, like I said, made it a point to have a physical, a personal phone call to, FaceTime or Skype with, just to have that personal connection, because I think that's ultimately the biggest, the biggest thing that separates a lot of these, atheist pages, is that sometimes you do get a lot of the trolls on there, the people that want to come in there and just basically what I call the seagull effect, where they come and take a crap on your page and they just fly away. Whereas, like encouraging and reinforcing, like Alan was saying, just honest questions about, that we've all encountered at some point in time, and just kind of having a nourishing environment where everybody's encouraged to not only get together on a personal level, but have a personal connection. Call that person, email them, talk to them. I don't know. What's your success been, Matt, with regard to getting people together? You said it's like herding cats, and I get that, but
yeah, we've met a couple times. I don't know. It's hard to describe. When you're actually meeting in person, it becomes a lot more personal, and like people want to bring in political views, and a big problem we noticed was like the age difference. For some reason, older people didn't feel comfortable. Like the older people all thought this was a group for young people, and the young people all thought this was a group for older people. But really, I don't know how to describe it. It's like this weird. It's like this weird. They're both thinking the same thing, but they don't realize that they're all part of the group. I don't know. So I ran into a lot of. It was like herding cats. Like I couldn't get people to realize that we're all a group, and then the whole time schedule thing. And I mean, we met up a couple times, and some good stuff came of it. I mean, that's actually how I met Buck. I was telling you earlier, he only lived here for 7 months or something like that. And when he moved here, he was looking for groups in the area to kind of meet people, and he came across our group, and we ended up becoming friends because I definitely made friends, but trying to get the whole group to meet up in person at the same time has been nearly impossible. So I don't know. It's just another aspect of it I thought maybe I would share.
So, question going out to both, the listening audience, if there is one, and or the other callers, is that, I think we've all kind of come to the conclusion that what we don't believe in is only a fraction of what ultimately defines us, right? So with that said, it is finding the common interest because, not all atheists are, liberal or democratic per se. I mean, a vast majority of them are. Not all atheists are like video game guys that live in mom's basement or, that kind of thing. We all have such a diverse array of interest that that's ultimately, I think, the fun part of really discovering kind of not only what we don't believe in that kind of is in unison, but finding out the things that we actually, that really make up a majority of our lives, other passions and interests that we have, rather than just focusing on what we don't believe in. Because we could sit and kick the can down the road all day about what we don't believe in, and how much further ahead are we going to get? We have to talk about what we're going to do to be active, about voicing it, because there's so many different methods, and I've had this discussion with so many people in the group as to how we go about, spreading the quote-unquote gospel, if you will, or just encouraging people to think rationally, and that it's not always a sledgehammer that works. Sometimes it's 250 grit sandpaper. There's a multitude or myriad of ways that we can get across to different people. And I know for me personally, my conversion ultimately started when there was this basically guy who I deemed to be this dickhead, arrogant, sledgehammer style, wielding atheist online who really challenged my beliefs. And I wanted to really prove this person wrong. So as a result, I dug deep into the trenches, so to speak, and read the Bible again and again, and tried to find verses and other resources online that basically more or less reinforced, wow, this guy is really right. So what I'm getting at is that I'm sure you guys have discovered that, in this quote-unquote coming out process or discovering other atheists or non-believers, we all kind of came to it in our own way, and that finding out what drives the other person, I think it behooves us, and chime in, guys, at any point if you would agree that, outside of just what we don't believe in, it's finding what we do believe in, things that, whether it's sports, music, lifestyle, you name it. I mean, just there's a ton of things that really help us connect, and that's the human effect of why I think this group has been so successful, is it's not just talking about atheism. And Alan, you want to take it from there?
Yeah. I completely agree. As my social presence on social media, the belligerent atheist, I tend to be more of the sledgehammer. But you're 100% correct that our community is the atheist community. It really is. It's such a diverse population. We said this on the show a couple of different times. Matt can attest that we've talked about. It takes so many different people to be a community, and it takes so many different voices to spread a message. So, my job in the atheist community, the role that I've taken up, is being as loud as possible. I catch people's attention, and I make people mad, and that happens, and I've gotten into debates, heated debates online. I get people's attention, and then some of my smarter, quieter sisters and brothers in the background, they're more the voice of reason. We mentioned Christy Winters on the show several times, Dr. Winters, the voice of reason, the calming. She had this calming effect, but there are so many other individuals that I could just go on for days listing names of people, and it takes every different type. There are people. Just like in any cross-section of society, you can look at Brooklyn or San Francisco or Los Angeles or New York and look at all the personalities of people. You can look at even your local group of friends and see all the different types of people. And that's exactly what it is. We're just a giant community of individuals that have one minor thing in common. And everything, and that's our only element that makes us perfectly a contiguous group, but there are other cliques within that group. We have our skiers and our people from Colorado, and we have our welders, and we have our craftsmen, our skilled tradesmen, and we have our IT people, and we have disabled people, and we have our lawyers, and we have all those different people. Some are more philosophical, and some are just belligerent like me. Some are more scientific, but it takes an entire community to run it, and it takes an entire set, a smorgasbord of voices not just to get the message across, but just to support each other, to turn inward when we need to help a fallen comrade, someone that's going through hard times, and to face outward when someone is trying to attack us. And that's exactly what it is. Then not everyone is allowed voice. We have our extroverts and introverts, and I think that's what makes the atheist community so amazing. It's just like anything else.
You mentioned that some of us are handicapped. I was wondering, Chad, are you handicapped in any way? Because we need to replace a guy in a wheelchair. Like, do you have crutches around the house anywhere? Or?
We have a niche.
Yeah. We're kind of auditioning for a handicapped person.
My legs are working just fine. So.
You sure you're not missing any toes or anything?
Nope.
We'll take whatever we can get.
Even the mildest form of autism or even a mild speech impediment would.
I mean, he's bald. That kind of counts, right?
Follically, yes. Follically impaired, I am.
Okay.
Hey,
we got something. Yes.
We got something.
Right.
Poor guy in a wheelchair. That's messed up, man.
I once heard a religious person say that God only made so many perfect heads, and he put hair in the rest. So I guess I'm gonna go with that one.
Nice. I'm starting to go bald. That's why I wear a hat. You can't really tell here. But anyways, I did want to say on on topic. Clearly, we're all into social media here. We have this show. Buck and I do the Neckbeard Nation show and whatnot. I do another show. But anyways, my whole philosophy on doing the shows and my whole idea on using social media is, as you were saying, BA, you were a little bit louder. I would say I am more laid back. Like, I don't look for arguments. I'm not really out there to, like, convert people, which I kind of explored it, and I am interested in looking into it more. But my plan of attack has been to just show who I am as an atheist and just be out. You know what I mean? Like, I'm comfortable with being out, and I like making videos. I like interacting, so I feel like that's doing my part. And it kind of ties into the thing what you were describing is how there's so many different types of us, and that's why I feel like, you know, if I just show my side of it, then everybody else will say, oh, well, I'm a little bit different, but we're all part of this community, and maybe if I share my story, then somebody else can relate with me in some way, you know what I mean? So that was my whole kind of laid-back approach to the social media, the stuff we do. But
Matt, you bring up an excellent point. If I may just chime in just to tie it to fit, dovetail onto that. I think it's a process for a lot of people. I know that when I initially came out, I was the Christopher Hitchens firebrand, angry atheist type initially, and then I realized that wasn't necessarily winning me a lot of friends per se. I wasn't as effective at winning the types of people over that I wanted to have a convincing argument and really have them actually take an honest look at their own faith or beliefs. So I've since revised my approach, so to speak, and taken a much more delicate, kind of a Socratic method, basically having them answer a lot of the questions that, they ultimately uncover the answers for themselves. So I think Alan wanted to chime in after this, but that's kind of just, I think it's a lot to do with like the phases of dealing with death. When you come out as an atheist, initially you're angry, you're pissed off because a lot of what you've been force-fed, a majority, if not your whole life, you've kind of come to realize is a lie. And so that ultimately impacts your overall demeanor. And as a result, you end up basically kind of just turning your back or basically giving the middle finger to a lot of the people who you once held dear, and you kind of, in retrospect, come to realize that a lot of what separated you from them is just a minor belief system. Outside of that, they're still the same people that you loved and grew up with. So, I'll let Alan, take it from there, but that's just my 2 cents. So.
Yeah, sure, no, agreed. And I would even expand on that further, that it is a generally insignificant belief system that stands between you and them. I don't think that there's as much emphasis that we place on the amount of insignificance. Even if it does hold some intrinsic value to the person, it can do more harm to everyone around them than it does good for them.
Well, that's kind of my feeling on it is fight fire with fire. If they're a moderate Christian who just takes the good and leaves the bad and doesn't really hurt anybody and doesn't try to enact laws that hurt other people, then I'm fine with that. But if people, you know what I mean, you got to meet them where they're at. You know what I'm saying? If they're trying to screw us over like this, whatever the hell her name is, Kim Davis or whatever, then you got to fight back. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't just roll over. But yeah, I don't know. So, whatever. I just
Well, I
wanted to
mean,
say that.
I agree with you, and it takes our, the Socrates, if you will, of the group, winning hearts and minds, and it's more of them that will not, I don't want to use the word convert, but enlighten. That will enlighten more individuals to even as far as moderate deism as opposed to direct contact theism. But it's some of us that kind of that get the ball rolling, and it takes both of us. And I completely respect all the quieter individuals, the like Matt, yourself, and Chad, the individuals that kind of stand behind me. And then I'll yell loudly and I'll draw some fire, and then once they've run out of rounds, then you guys talk some sense into them, and that's kind of how I play it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was trying to emphasize. I think it takes both. It takes multiple approaches. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so.
Exactly, I agree completely. And I wanted to read a couple of comments that we have in the live chat. Okay, that's just a bunch of "you're awesome," and I'll take that. But Rebecca says, Rational Thinkers has been lucky in finding a few people who value genuine human connection and are willing to connect in that way. And that's really important because it is just a community. And I think part of that success is due to the member-led adding. So it being a closed group, it is the members inside that look outward, and they're selective about the people they bring in because they don't want to destroy their oasis. And I think that's the thing, is that it's a social media oasis, and there has been a standard of conduct, and they personally pull they pull those individuals in that they think are cerebral, but also they're going to be tactfully confrontational and appropriately confrontational. Also, let's see, Moose Gal said, I could use a lot more community where I live. I did mention that there are many online communities out there. I live in the South, and I've found some, but there are also other types of communities. You can go to the American Humanist Association. You can go to some of those other online websites that have groups, even meetups. I know that sounds odd, but if you go on the meetups, you can find atheist groups, secular groups, humanist groups, Gnostic and agnostic atheist groups, and just individuals that just rationally think, I guess. But if for some reason in your town there isn't one, or you have to travel a little bit and you're willing to do that, that's great. If not, why not start one? Why not start a community in your area? Maybe there are many like-minded people like yourself, and it takes one person to step forward and post a couple of flyers and to be willing to stand forward, and you may find that there are many more friends in your community that think just like you than you even dreamed. That was my point.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I'm just astounded just at living in what I've discovered is one of the more secular cities here in the United States, with Denver approximately 40 to 50% secular, and that one befuddled me. There was some study I saw on the American Humanist Association website they kind of reinforced that. But in talking about just the transitional phases and whatnot, and just kind of having it's such a large conglomerate of styles of personalities and stuff, and what ultimately brought us to our lack of beliefs and whatnot. It was a good segue because I think ultimately I'm struggling for words here for this one, but Matt, you had a question earlier with regard to you said something about herding cats and getting people together that kind of prompted a question within me, and I wanted to kind of redirect back at you for a second because what sort of tactics have you employed to really put the carrot on the stick, so to speak, or make it a little bit more appealing for people to want to get together, because it is like herding cats. And so, a lot of people found it really difficult. I mean, if you don't live in a big city, like Denver has a place called the Secular Hub, of which there's, I believe, hundreds of people that meet there pretty regularly. And, but, finding a niche, you're in the Cape Cod area, you said?
Yeah, I think part of my problem is actually, you touched on it, is I'm in the Cape Cod area, and the closest area, the big city in the area is Boston. It's maybe, I don't know, hour and a half, 2 hours drive, and that is like, there are so many groups there for everything. Like I wish I could just like live there on the weekends just for hanging out with all these groups of everything I'm interested in. And it's kind of like the big planet that sucks in all the mass from all the little asteroids around it, and the little planet's over here trying to get what it can, but it can't grab anything because everybody's going over to that big group. So basically, I noticed that like a lot of the people I did get are in the bigger groups closer to Boston, and they're always like, "Oh, why don't you guys just come to our other group?" And it's like, no, I started this so I don't have to drive 2 hours, and so I feel like I'm in my own community. You know what I'm saying? So, I think that's part of it. Uh, I don't know. So yeah, you kind of touched on it. And you know, if I wanted to just give in and drive all the time, then I would. But I'm so envious of churches. Like, there's a church on every corner, and they have cornered the market on face-to-face interaction with people, and it's like such a great thing to be able to meet face-to-face with people. Like, so many job opportunities, relationships, you know what I mean? Like you mentioned, helping somebody pay their bills or home for the holidays, I think you were saying.
Correct.
Like, that happens all the time at churches, and I think it happens a lot more when you actually see the person and have more of a personal relationship. That's why I'm like, I want that to happen. So I don't know, maybe I have something else, but
Perhaps even starting something where you do, once a month, just kind of like the pay it forward mantra. And I love to do that where you see, just gather only, if only you have a couple of friends, 2 or 3 are your friends, and you get together, 20, $30, and you go take care of a couple of people and, bring them in someplace and buy them a meal and just tell them.
yeah, that's actually my dream of the group, is to be able to do non-for-profit things like help homeless people and stuff. But like, I just feel like I'm spinning my tires with it, because we got a decent amount of people, and people get excited at first when they first get in, and they start talking. They're like, yeah, it's so great. I didn't think any other atheists were around. Like, yeah, we're here, we want to hang out, And then I'll create a meet date, and everybody says, oh, we'll either go or maybe I'm going, and then everybody just cancels. So then I cancel. It's like, I'm not just going to be me and Buck sitting there again. We sit there every weekend anyway, you know what I mean? Like, so then I just created an open door policy. Like, we would film our show on Sundays, and I would say, if anybody wants to come over any Sunday, we will be filming the show. You guys can either come during the show or after the show, and we'll hang out and get lunch. And Buck and I would go to lunch every single Sunday. Did I say Sunday before? Whatever.
Yes.
It was on Sundays. Okay. I thought I said Saturday. Whatever. So I tried everything, dude. I tried setting dates. I mean, we've had a couple of hangouts, and it was cool. I've tried game nights, like board game. I have a bunch of board games. I tried that. And I don't know. I don't know what the hell.
Ways to do it. So here's something to think about, and just food for thought. If I can, Alan, just chime in quick on this. So you mentioned, the church seems to be winning that respect, and I couldn't agree with you more. I've gone into a couple mega churches out here in Colorado that are literally pulling more than 10,000 people into a service on a Sunday out here. It is unbelievable. It's almost as if going to like a rock concert, if you will. So one of the best things that, there's an article out that I read not too long ago, something about everything I need to know about marketing I learned from the church. Have you guys heard something about that?
I think I did hear about that, yeah.
Okay, so
I don't know
very close attention to what the churches are doing, the ones that are effective in getting new people in. It's obviously a ploy, kind of taking in the emotionally downtrodden, the emotionally vulnerable, and whatnot, and just kind of speaking to them specifically. But here's something that, food for thought, in kind of getting some momentum going for something locally. In that, how often do you see people wearing something about, Christianity, or something about I love God on my shirt, or a cross on their neck? I mean, if I had a nickel for every time I've seen somebody wearing a cross, that to me is an invitation to start at least a brief dialogue, exchange pleasantries, and just ask them a couple basic questions about their quote-unquote faith. With that, hopefully you can break the ice enough and come across as, a non-condescending, just open-minded, nice person. Invite that person to coffee. Get to really know them and just really start a dialogue. I've actually had really good success over the last month where I've gotten together with 2 different people just in the last 3 weeks here, that were kind of like sitting on the fence and had some questions pertaining to their own faith. And so, I mean, that may be food for thought for you to really add that personal feel and connection. So
No, I think you're right. My last vehicle had a bunch of atheist stickers on it, and I met a couple people that way. But yeah, I think you're right. Being able to advertise like that and feeling comfortable advertising definitely brings in more people.
I think it goes without saying that confirmation bias is very strong in the church, and that, it's like comfort food. It's why we keep going back to certain foods and whatnot that we like. So I noticed that for me, walking away from religion, I was walking away from my comfort zone, and I'm sure that any of you that had also walked away might have experienced the same thing. But with that said, we have to kind of acknowledge the fact that confirmation bias is a powerful force, and the more we can kind of use the Socratic method in getting people to kind of answer the questions for themselves, and basically starting that discussion where you're not necessarily putting them in the hot seat, but just kind of making them step back for a second, that really can help our cause immensely. Would you agree?
Are you going, BA?
Oh, I was going to say yes, I would agree completely. I think one of Matt's major problems is that, given his area, everyone is a bunch of massholes. No, I'm just kidding. I play around.
Yeah, that's part of it.
No, that's serious. No, think about it though. Everyone, the larger groups are trying to absolve the smaller groups when in fact everyone should be supporting each other. That's a very New England thing to do. Okay, being from that area, it is a very New England thing to do. Also, I think that the social norm in the Northeast is typically not only more conservative but more individual. So I think you're going to have a little bit of a harder time, at least in the Northeast, in putting some of those groups together. And I mean, secular people are everywhere. We are everywhere. We're taking over. But I mean, besides that, I think it's going to be hard in the Northeast where everything is a little bit more individual instead of community-oriented. In the South or in the Midwest, there's more of an emphasis on community. So individuals are kind of stepping out more to talk to each other, to just to search out individuals, to make connections and evolve as people. In the Northeast, it's kind of get the hell out of my face unless I need to talk to you. I don't necessarily want to talk to you. The people tend to build friendships based off of forced similarities. Like, for instance, you are on a bowling league. You become friends with your bowling mates, or maybe some of the other teams you might coalesce with them a little bit. But your coworkers. You'll make friends with your coworkers. But in the Northeast, isn't really known for going out and finding community events.
Well,
to go be part of.
That's painting a little bit kind of with a broad stroke from a broad brush. In that, take a look specifically at New England sports teams. Everybody wants to be a part of something much bigger than themselves. So, for example, the Patriots, their following is insanely huge. You've got the Red Sox. I mean, look at all the paraphernalia that people are wearing, supporting those teams. I don't know. It's like that out here in Denver as well. Everybody's a huge Broncos fan. People want to be a part of something outside of themselves. So, do you think that that's really fair to say that it's completely individual there? Whereas, I mean, clearly there's a lot of people who show outwardly that they want to be a part of something outside of themselves.
I know what he's touching on, because if you go up and just say hi to somebody here, they think you're crazy.
Yeah, they're going to look at you like you're clinically insane.
Yeah, and you can't just go up and strike up a conversation with somebody, basically.
It's not completely individual, but people will make friends with their cubicle mates. People will make friends with individuals that are nearby them, but as far as passing people on the street or meeting strangers in a strange location, that's not something that you'll normally see. I wouldn't say that everyone is completely individual. I would say that people are mostly individual. And I would also say that New Englanders, the friends that they make are usually more close-kept friends and not 100 acquaintances.
I should say, I mean, there might be a fallacy there of some kind of grass is always greener type thing. I mean, it might be the same elsewhere, but I know what you're trying to say, BA, and I've seen it, so I don't know.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to. I know that I painted a broad brush, but that I think is due to experience, interacting with so many people from different states. And like I said, people join communities larger than themselves. But, I mean, I would say with the sports team, it's definitely a hometown pride thing. They're very proud of the people that sit near them and are around them, and it's Boston strong. and it's, you know, those kinds of things for sure. Very, very prideful. And of course, I am using that broad brush, and not everyone is like that. It would be disingenuous for me to say that every single person that was in New England was exactly like that. But I believe that I can generalize in mostly that's kind of the culture. It is more of an individual culture where you connect and you find closer friendships amongst other people. I wouldn't say that people are generally more introverted because there's a healthy mix, but I would say the culture of New England is a little bit more close knit. It's not people going, and maybe because it's cold, you know, maybe because most of the year is spent, you know, near freezing and below temperatures, so people don't want to venture and go out. Maybe the warmer areas lead more towards community because people are going out more. I'm not saying that that is the thing. Maybe that has something to do with it, but that just seems to be kind of the trend.
So would it be safe to say though that humans by nature of virtue are kind of just generally curious? So for example, I know
Exactly.
that if there's a logo or something that I'm not familiar with, somebody has a particular strain of letters on their shirt that I'm not familiar with, it's some sort of acronym or something, that I'm more than likely at some point, if I've seen it enough, if I get up the guts, I'm going to ask them what it's about. So, you know, my question to Matt is, do you have any you know, things that have like the A on it, or any things that might, you know, spark up a conversation with somebody who may be a little bit curious?
Yeah, I brought that up earlier. My last vehicle, I had tons of atheist stickers on. I did meet people that way, so I totally agree with that. It's kind of like we were talking about this in one of our other episodes. I think it was a sports episode. It's kind of like a brand that we can. It's kind of fun because not a lot of religious people know the atheist A, but an atheist can spot it from a mile away, you know. So it's fun because it's like a little secret club we have. But I talked to BA about it before. I was a little hesitant at first to put it on my vehicle because of the place I worked at the time. My boss was a wicked conservative Christian. So I thought of getting like a sports team A that looked like an atheist A and putting that on there, or I was going to do an atheist A and tell them that it was for that sports team. So Buck suggested the Albuquerque Isotopes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I actually want to like get that team sticker now and put it on my car. And if anybody asks me, I'm gonna put like that A and a couple other atheist A's. But now I'm like completely out. But I mean, I do some of my I kind of have my own business where I do some of my own work on the side, so I'm a little hesitant because I know that like it could be a stigma. Yeah, but I don't know. I just thought that was a funny thing. Like if I ever see Albuquerque Isotopes, I'm gonna ask the guy, "Hey man, you an atheist?"
So in lieu of taking a passive aggressive stance, I mean, ultimately our job is, whether it's, you know, the 80 grit, 120 grit, or 250 grit sandpaper, or fishing with dynamite, so to speak, you know, just kind of spread the message, or use the sledgehammer like Alan, you know, advised that he's more that the firebrand. We all kind of have our part to basically kind of take the reins, so to speak. And so there's a multitude of tactics that we can all employ to get out there and just kind of encourage critical thinking. But ultimately, every good conversation starts with a question, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So
Is this going to be a good conversation?
this could be very
I hope so.
You know, the question I have for you guys is what sort of tactics are you guys using to start a conversation with somebody who you may have just met, or you may believe is kind of sitting on the fence?
Honestly, I rarely ever start to talk about religion. Being in the South, it always ends there. But usually I'm like, so, how was your day? And they're like, well, you know, Jesus has made this a great day for me. Sometimes I don't necessarily exactly take the direct route in personal. Online, I'm definitely the firebrand. I'm your Christopher Hitchens. You know, that's exactly who I am. But those are the people that are drawn to me too. The loudest people from all of the theist sides of the debate are all drawn to me, and they all mostly Muslims, start arguments with me online. In person, I am known to be more direct, a little less Socratic, a little more belligerent than that, I think. But when I talk to people, when I bring it up, I was like, oh, I don't know, man. It's just there's so much religious common event and current event that happens in the South that I mean, there are so many opportunities to talk about it, and it seems like my coworkers, despite my, telling them I don't necessarily want to talk about it in the workplace because they all hate me because of it, being a black sheep. They'll come up to me and be like, well, what do you think about Kim Davis? And then I'll just take the direct approach. I don't beat around the bush. That's just also the type of person that I am. I am brutally honest. I tell them exactly what I think. So I take the direct approach when I'm talking to people. I don't necessarily intentionally strike hurtful blows, but I don't hold back my feelings about a subject if they want to really know what I think.
So, being that the word atheist has a negative stigma associated with it, my question is, what are you guys doing to help kind of dispel some of the rumors and myths that revolve around that word specifically?
I want to say that I think you, Chad, I can kind of tell that you've been researching this a little bit, but have you researched street epistemology at all, or the Manual for Creating Atheists?
Yes.
Yeah, because I was on a kick for that for a while. Like I wanted to get into it and started making videos. And I have the book. I haven't finished reading it, but I do want to move in that direction. But so I just want to preface with what I'm about to say with that is I do want to move in that more I don't know, like evangelistic, or I don't know what to call it, like almost like a missionary for atheism, but is the way I would think about it. But I want to say up until I get to that point in my life, I've like I said, I've been really laid back, so I will let people kind of bring things up, and then I will kind of slowly, like, I won't, I'll say what I mean, but I won't like come out and say, that's stupid. I'll just say I don't believe in that, or or I'll say like I don't know, I would think about that a little bit deeper or something like that. I'll just kind of, and it's worked really good for my family. Like my brother was pretty religious, and I didn't push anything on him, and he kind of came around just by knowing that I was an atheist, just by being out and not pushing it down anybody's throat. I felt like worked really well for me. I don't have a lot of friends where I live now, and I don't have a lot of personal interactions. There's a couple of guys I work with that I have they've talked about atheism with, and they have actually basically confided to me that they are atheists, but they're kind of like the kind of atheist who just doesn't really care. They're like, yeah, I don't believe, but who gives a shit? You know what I mean? Like that's where it ends. And whenever like something, it's kind of funny. We joke around at work all day. Like we always pick out whenever a Christian does something two-faced, because I don't know. I know everybody does that kind of thing, but it just seems like so much worse when a Christian does it. Because like you're supposed to be holy, you're supposed to be this and that, and they just seem to be. It just seems fun to point that out. But so we'll do that all day at work. But I want to say that one thing I'm very strong on is sticking to the term atheist. That's why when I made my group, when I first made my group, I had joined another guy's group in the area called Cape Cod Humanists, and it was just me and him, and we didn't get anybody else, and he ended up giving up, and I said, well, if you give up, I'm starting my own group, but I'm not calling it a humanist, I'm calling it atheist. He was an atheist, and he's like, all right, well, I gotta do something else with my life. So I started a group and made it Cape Cod Atheist. So when I made it to Atheist, like the first couple of people joined was like, well, a bunch of people who joined were like, maybe if we change the name from Atheist to Humanist, more people would join. And I'm like, no, their argument was that it's a more friendly term, basically. I'm like, it's only a more friendly term because you're giving it that connotation. Like, if we stick to the name atheist and show people that it's not a scary term, it's not a scary word, and that all it means is a lack of belief in God, you know what I mean? Then we're the ones who are going to change that stigma around the word. So, I mean, that's one thing I stick to my guns on. Like, I have to have atheist in the name of the group. And I said, listen, you guys, I am not trying to be like a overlord of this group. If you guys want to change the name, then change the name, but I'm going to leave and start Cape Cod Atheists again because that's the group I want to be in. That's what I want to promote, So, I don't know. That's my feeling on all that.
You brought up an interesting point, Alan, if I can just chime in real quick on this. So you'd mentioned you have some of the friends that you've associated with out there that are kind of like the passive-aggressive, that they don't really care. Yeah, I don't believe in God, but So obviously, if they're part of any sort of news group that kind of stays on the forefront as to what harm is happening on a daily basis with respect to religious beliefs, religion itself, or just faith per se. It could be something along the lines of parents not vaccinating their children because they don't believe in that, because it goes against religious ideals. I mean, there's a multitude of things that are associated with that, and Alan can attest the fact that we're made privy to this stuff, and so ultimately these people are basically turning a blind eye and a deaf ear to what is going on in the world around them. And I don't know about you, but I care about other people. And I don't necessarily try to preach my atheism per se. I don't care what other people believe. I just want to encourage them not to think like me, but just to think, period, and have some empathy towards other, humans and or animals. If animals are being sacrificed still, harmlessly for, some religious tradition and not harvested for meat or, it's just, Alan, do you want to tie into that?
Yeah, I would like to first point out that Matt completely reinforced my opinion of New Englanders talking about, not as many friends and then the community not coming together and stuff. So, yeah, you completely supported what I have to say. Second, to get to your question, Chad, about what I'm doing to change the name of atheism, I'm not. I'm not doing anything. I know that there's a negative connotation associated with the word atheism, and that's something that I personally cannot break. And that's why, that's why you two are, and other people like you, are part of the community. I'm not actively doing anything to affect anyone's opinion. I'm a warpath atheist. That's how I've always been. Whatever I do, I'm passionate about, and whatever I'm passionate about, I take it to the limit. I know many people that would tell me that's exactly how I am. So, I mean, I'm not doing anything to change the opinion. I'm actually living up to it, which is slightly unfortunate, but I'm one of the louder individuals that gets people's attention. I'm the flare that you shoot up in the air to catch everyone's attention while the troops come in and silently destroy everybody. That's kind of my mentality behind it. I have been bombarded with religious war and attacked with religious oppression, both mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, and social, for a long enough time that I have been told for so long that I'm attacking their belief with my atheism, that I started attacking their belief as an atheist. And that's the approach that I've taken. So I am very direct. And everyone, I'd like to tie that into what both you were saying just slightly earlier. Everyone requires a different approach when you talk to them. So yes, I'm very warpath. I'm very belligerent. But you can tell when you start a conversation how sensitive someone is when you start. So if I'm talking to someone and they're quieter, they're a little more reserved, they're a little more introvert, I'm not going to yell at them. However, if someone I have a coworker that likes to come out all red tomato faced and crab claw hand and start yelling at me about religion, and I yell back. I live more in the debate and I live more in the agitation. But there are people, if I notice a situation that requires some sensitivity, I generally direct them to someone more qualified for that than me. I'll direct them to the Chad Paquettes. I'll direct them to other people and rational thinkers. I'll direct them to people that are very close to me and people that I know that are a lot more sensitive and are very much more equipped, very much more, I know that's a thing, that are much more equipped to deal with that situation. So, being a good leader in any community, being a good individual is knowing the tools, resources, and individuals and their specialties that you can touch. And I try and keep the individuals with the specialties that I don't have available. So if it requires that type of communication, I can hand them off to someone that can communicate with them effectively, because I might not be able to.
But that's ultimately putting yourself in a position where you appear, so to speak, in your own narrative as being devoid of empathy, which I clearly know that you are not. You have, an overwhelming amount of empathy for people, Alan, and that, yeah, the firebrand or warpath atheist, as you deem yourself to be, isn't necessarily who you really are. Because I mean, yeah, that it depends on how you're confronted with, a conversation. However, we all, I think, could be in accord with the thinking that we're going to tend to want to gravitate towards people who are more open and inviting and empathetic, right? So with that said, yes, I mean, there's firebrand. There's those people that, want to just attack the belief, so to speak. But, like that, how the religious often say, hate the sin, love the sinner, right? So we can hate the belief and, love the believer, right? So,
Exactly, and that's kind of what I was saying about, attacking the belief. I'm not attacking the person, but if they come off at me and they're throwing their belief at me, I'm going to disassemble their belief and their ideas in front of them. I'm going to separate their fact from opinion, and I'm going to do that. My narration and my goal and mission statement has never been to debase people. It is important to me, and I'm sure, Chad, that you can attest to my actions on social media, that I do not disrespect people, but I will go out of my way sometimes to disrespect a belief, because a belief is nothing more than an opinion or an idea. And I'm okay with criticizing those ideas and pointing out the faults, but it's not the person's fault for believing them in every case. So I treat people with more respect than I treat their opinions, and that's kind of where I draw the line.
Yes, it's imperative that we make that distinction, especially to the quote-unquote believers, because realizing that they're not being personally attacked, because coming from that camp years ago, I took it personally when somebody attacked my beliefs. And Matt, I don't know if you also came from a religious, upbringing, but I know for a fact that a lot of people that I still encounter to this day, their religious beliefs trump everything in life. So it doesn't matter what evidence you present me. I'm going to believe in Jesus no matter what you tell me. And basically that's the point they bring up. Then the conversation's over. So
Yeah, I was just like non-denominational kind of woo-woo kind of stuff, so I haven't experienced that personally, but I totally see it every day. You're right. They don't distinguish their beliefs from their person, they're very tied together, and I mean, I think they would actively defend that their beliefs are the same as their person, so.
Yeah, no, I agree. And if we don't have anything else to add, if I can get a thumbs up from everybody, we'll move on to the next segment. We can do the scripture wheel. Matt, if you're ready to get the wheel. Okay, so I'm going to explain real quick for anyone who's watching or doesn't understand what the scripture wheel of the scripture wheel is. So every show, Matt goes and gets a wheel, puts it up in front of the camera, spins it, and then selects the scripture off the wheel. Excuse me. He reads it for everybody, and then we comment on it, share personal stories, or make jokes. Matt, are you ready?
Hey, you guys, I had to grease the wheel. I noticed last time it was lagging a little bit, but we're good now. Watch this thing fly,
Do you
right?
have anything besides Leviticus on there? I'm curious.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. All right, Matt, spin the wheel.
All right.
All right, here's hoping it's something not from Leviticus this time.
I'm not guaranteeing it, dude. All right. Let's see what we got. Oh, it's Leviticus. All right.
Damn it, Matt! You're supposed to put something else on there.
It's got all the good stuff.
You have one job.
Listen, you're lucky you even get the wheel, all right? I greased it and everything. Here we go. One who blasphemes the name of the Lord shall be put to death. The whole congregation shall stone the blasphemer. Aliens as well as citizens, when they blaspheme the name, shall be put to death. Leviticus 24:16.
So blaspheming out loud means you be put to death. So in context of the show, every single one of our communities and holding up a banner is actually just sentencing ourselves to death, right?
Yeah, and it says aliens as well as citizens. So, I mean, I would take aliens to interpret that even if they haven't heard of the teachings of Christ, then they still should be put to death. I mean, I don't know.
That's also in a couple other verses, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it's also in the book of Matthew.
All right.
Talking about blaspheming the Holy Spirit.
Good. Yeah, get off my ass.
I'm wondering. Yeah, I mean, they copied and pasted some things here and there. That doesn't excuse Matt from the Leviticus thing. But moving on, I wonder if aliens, does that mean extraterrestrial, or does that just mean immigrants? The Republicans want to know.
I'm sure it's just some weird translation. I don't know.
In fact, specifically Donald Trump wants to know, because if it talks about any type of aliens, they're all going to be pushed out of the country and, hung up on a cross anyways. So, wow, that escalated quickly, didn't it? Sorry, guys. All right. So, yeah, blaspheming against the name of the Lord thy God, which I actually think that is a commandment, if I'm not mistaken. Taking the Lord's name in vain kind of is illegal in the scripture.
So here's my problem, okay?
Okay, go ahead.
Isn't the Lord's name Yahweh? When did they change the Lord's name to God, dude? Like, you can't take the word God and say that that's his name, and then all the other gods, you know what I'm saying? Like, when you ask a question, what God? God, the God. No, his name is fucking Yahweh, dude. Stop trying to take the word God.
I want to say that was an Anglican translation to make it more omniversal, to kind of overshadow paganism, and to try to take that away from any other religion, just as has been done for Christmas and just has been done for the winter solstice kind of thing. We're talking like Easter, all those kinds of holidays that were taken over by Christianity. I think it's just another one of those moves. So yes,
yeah, I think you're right. I haven't
Yahweh
heard this.
is the Abrahamic God. Yahweh is, I mean, they have Allah, of course, which is...
Yahweh is Judaism. It was, ultimate, the Alpha and Omega, whereas Christianity kind of took and massaged that, correct? He can be called Jehovah. He can be called a multitude of things, correct?
Oh, yeah, Jehovah. Yeah, my beef is with taking the word God. Like, dude, this is how effed up it is, all right? When I was a kid, the Christians I knew, I knew, like, some kind of serious Christians, and they had a problem with Jehovah's Witnesses. I didn't even really know what it wasn't Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't know who the hell it was. But that group called God Yahweh, and my friends were like, that group's a cult. I'm like, why? They're like, because they call God Yahweh. His name is God. And I was like, whoa, that is weird. I never heard the term Yahweh before. Then when I grew up and actually learned about it, I'm like, wait a minute, that's God's actual name, and they didn't even know that, and they're calling themselves Christians? I don't know. That's why it's kind of my pet peeve. But.
Yeah, and Yahweh itself as a word is kind of lame, honestly. If I was going to pick a cool name to be a god, it wouldn't have been Yahweh. It would have been like, I don't know, Michael or Gabriel or something.
Anyone who's researched the historicity of the biblical text, Yahweh was actually derived from the Greek letters YHWH, which basically they thought meant Yahweh, and they added the E when they wrote the Bible. So there's some interesting stuff if you kind of study the backstory on that.
Also, Iosis and Jeshua, which, there was no Iosis translation for Jesus, which would have been the more Jewish translation. And then there was the closest thing they had were the letters available from Roman and Hebrew. Let me be politically correct, sorry. There's the Hebrew and there's the Roman. So when they moved it over Roman, it became Jeshua, which is actually more Joshua. But when it was translated later for other languages, it became Jesus. Mm-hmm. So it's just it's like lost in translation, really.
Agreed, because ultimately the Bible was written in Aramaic, which, and Greek, which one of the two languages is a dead language right now, right? So it wasn't written in Aramaic, it was translated. Basically, it was an auditory story that was translated for centuries. It's then present-day Greek, so...
Right, so I think we can actually just throw away all the scriptures as being completely irrelevant. So I don't know. They're completely mistranslated. But yeah, no. So Matt, Chad saved you. Matthew 12:31. So we'll just say it was from Matthew 12:31 instead. That way it wasn't from Leviticus this time. Matt, you're back?
Yeah, sorry. I meant to unmute and I hit hang up.
Yeah, sure, not a problem. I was just actually saying that Chad saved you, and that we can just say that verse was from Matthew 12:31 instead of the alternate Leviticus. It just sounds better, and it sounds like we actually tried. So we'll do that.
And Matthew is my name, so it's
That's right.
technically
So it's
for me
actually like your book.
twofold. It's like Inception, dude.
Yeah, we also did create the religion of it was the guy in the wheelchair. What do we call it, Matt? Can you refresh my memory, please?
I don't remember what it was called. But...
Man, I wish I could remember. Oh, it was crazy. We'll have to watch one of the previous videos.
Well, we're starting a new religion for bald people now.
The Cult of Iron Chariot.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was the cult. The Cult of Iron Chariot, and yeah, there were all kinds of commandments. Luke 12:10 also. Yeah, okay. So Matthew or Luke.
I knew it was in both books.
All right. So kind of wrapping it up real quick, since we did have kind of a drawdown of momentum. Chad did have someone that he did want to highlight. I also have a YouTube channel. We did speak about epistemology, so I'm going to highlight someone else. But Chad did want to highlight Daniel Miessler. So, Chad, if you'll talk for a second on Daniel Miessler and kind of what he's about, what he talks about, and why you think he's awesome.
Well, in a nutshell, it comes to a point where you just want to present as much factual information with respect to anytime you're dealing with, an evangelical Christian who wants to present, the Bible as historical fact. You need to articulate some well-made points, pointing out some of the not only glaringly obvious inconsistencies and/or contradictions in the Bible, but I think Matthew here did a phenomenal job of kind of a collection of evidence against, kind of making a case against why Christianity is basically a farce, complete farce. So he's not super well known, but he definitely put in some time to his research, and I'm sure it's a conglomerate effort. Ultimately, you stand on the shoulder of geniuses. You basically take other people's ideas and you massage them and kind of make them your own. And I think that's kind of what he's done. He's definitely not a Dr. Richard Carrier or somebody, David Fitzgerald, or somebody who's kind of written a multitude of books as to, pointing out, flaws in biblical and historical text. But this is a great starting point for somebody who's looking for some ammo in their collective gun, so to speak, to point out to some of their Christian friends who are willing, at least, to take a look, because we all know that the truth will stand on its own merit. If we know unequivocally that 2 + 2 = 4, that it'll withstand any scrutiny and/or challenge or testing, and that's what we have to present to these Christians, is that if what you supposedly believe in is true, then we need to weigh it against the evidence, and here's a great way to do so. Take a look at these different verses, how they contradict one another. So, in a nutshell, that's kind of where that's at.
Oh, that's awesome that Daniel Miessler did that. But I would even go so further, not just to say Christians, although Christianity is more prominent in the United States. To some of our viewers in Europe, we have a couple in Scotland and throughout the United Kingdom and other places, it may be more Muslim or Jewish, depending on your community that you're in. So, we have there are Taoists and there are Buddhists, which tend to be a little bit more recluse, tend to be. But I'd like to expand that further. Is that there are plenty of resources out there for anyone that is feeling confronted by anyone's beliefs. But Daniel Miessler is definitely seems like a good source to attack the Bible as fiction. And use that collection of evidence that he presented, and I'm glad that you kind of talked about that. Another resource that we have available to us, and I'm going to pull this up real quick, the link for Daniel Miessler and also our YouTube highlight for the week is going to be in the link in the description below the video. I'd like to highlight Anthony Magnabosco. Anthony Magnabosco is a street epistemologist. Epistemology separating opinion. That's the point, separating the opinion out. And he has many videos that you can see. I'll pull it up right here. You can look. Some of them are a little bit longer, some are a little bit shorter. It depends on the individual, how they wanted to talk. But he doesn't put anyone on camera that doesn't want to speak, so we ask them first. There's some bonus content on there, additional conversation afterwards. But Anthony Magnabosco he's very Socratic in his method. The epistemology that he exemplifies, it really separates people from their belief. It gets them thinking. separates their belief from opinion and gets them thinking about, what is actually going on. How do they actually feel? Is that what they're thinking? Is that what they're saying? So he does a really great job in his videos, and I implore everyone to check him out. I'm going to be highlighting him on the right-hand side of the Heretic Clerics channel. Under Atheist Spotlight is going to be Anthony Magnabosco, and I'm also going to have the link to Daniel Miessler's blog in the link to the description below. Also, I'd kind of want to expand on your point for a second, Chad, and say that he hasn't written a lot of books, but we're moving away. Books are very relevant still, but I think blogs are more relevant. Everyone is absorbing information a lot quicker. So, people that can get their ideas across in a tweet, those 150 characters, people, that can absorb small articles, that's really where we're moving as a society, is quick bits of information as fast as possible. And blogs are just a lot more relevant for the majority of the time than books are. I mean, a book is a great while you're taking a bath kind of thing, while you're relaxing at the end of the day, but really, blogs are really where it's moving towards, the snippets of opinion and information and also fact, pulling those in micro bits.
So, touching real briefly on the aspect of blogs, there's one person who I have followed who I think does a phenomenal job of covering the gamut of different aspects and avenues with respect to religions, plural. It's JT Eberhardt, and I shared a link in the group chat window there that feel free to share. But
all right, let me pull it up real quick.
Articulate.
You can keep talking while I pull it up.
Yeah, JT Eberhardt. I initially heard about him through kind of some mutual friends. Seth Andrews, the quote-unquote thinking atheist, had referred me to JT's blog, and since that point, he touches on everything pertaining to religion. He does a phenomenal job. So I'd recommend it. He does a daily blog post and thread you can follow, and it's just relevant, short, sweet, to the point articles that really touch on a multitude of issues. So I'd recommend it.
Awesome, outstanding. And the link to JT Eberhardt, his Patheos blog, What Would JT Do? Fighting Religion Tooth and Claw. So Daniel Miessler and JT Eberhard, excuse me, both of those blogs are going to be highlighted in the description below this video. And Anthony Magnabosco is going to be our Atheist Spotlight YouTube on the right-hand side. Tonight we talked about secular social media. We had our special guest Chad Paquette, who is the creator and head admin of the Facebook group Rational Thinkers. We highlighted just how social media is working in the atheist community, what types of people are in the atheist community, and how social media affects that and vice versa. We covered a couple different articles, and we ended on a scripture from a few different books. Apparently copy and paste was very popular back in the day, using stone and using hammer and chisel. But for all of our viewers here tonight, I would like to say thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching us. If you're watching this video still, congratulations. That's quite a feat. Thank you for doing that. And I want to extend a thank you out to Chad Paquette for stopping by tonight.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, not a problem. It was not a problem. It was a pleasure for us. So everyone, I just want to say have a good night and deuces.